This week on A&N, Christmas greetings from Adventist Church President Ted Wilson.
An Adventist scientist weighs in on new evidence of the biblical flood.
And students in Africa use a magazine to share their faith.
These stories and more coming up.
This is A&N, a service of the Seventh-day Adventist World Church. Thanks so much for joining us this week.
First in the news, Adventist World Church President Ted Wilson and his wife Nancy are hosting a special Christmas edition of Revival for Mission this holiday season. Ansel Oliver has this report.
Christmas is a time to reflect on God's forgiveness and love for humanity. That's the message Adventist Church President Ted Wilson is sharing this week during a special appeal to church and community members worldwide. The half-hour program highlights how God reconciled himself with humanity by sending Jesus to earth on the very first Christmas more than 2,000 years ago. Wilson says the story still inspires peace and goodwill today.
Jesus realized that there was a need not only for us to be reconciled to Him, but that reconciliation would not be complete unless we are also reconciled to each other.
Later in the program, Wilson is joined by his wife, Nancy, who tells the original Christmas story through the eyes of a young shepherd.
Imagine for a moment you are there. It is a warm night, so you are lying on a bed on the roof of a flat-topped house. The rest of the family is asleep, but you are awake.
The President's message also features the new music video, God's Gifts. The Christmas music medley includes dozens of performers and instruments representing the diversity of the global denomination.
We all have different styles and approaches to Christmas, but one language we all speak and understand is music. It's the same song praising Jesus' birth in every culture.
As Adventists worldwide reflect on God's gifts this Christmas, Pastor and Mrs. Wilson say they hope members feel inspired to demonstrate the same generosity in their own lives.
During this special time of year, let's remember to take time to be with Jesus and to tell others about Him, the best gift of all.
Revival for Mission, a Christmas special with Ted Wilson, is available in 11 languages, from Spanish to Swahili. Adventist leaders say they hope the message speaks to a worldwide church and helps members feel connected, despite the distances that separate them. At Adventist World Church headquarters, this is Ansel Oliver for A&N.
Revival for Mission, a Christmas special with Ted Wilson, airs December 21 to 25 on Hope Channel. You can also watch the Adventist Church Leaders message online at perspectives.adventist.org. There, you can download Pastor Wilson's greetings to watch later at your church, school, or home.
The man who found the wreckage of the Titanic now says there's proof that an even more famous boat may have existed. Renowned underwater archaeologist Robert Ballard says he's found evidence of the biblical flood that carried Noah's Ark. Ballard and his team recently discovered an ancient shoreline 120 meters, or 400 feet, below the surface of the Black Sea. His research indicates that the inland sea dividing Europe and Asia was once a freshwater lake until a giant wall of water from the Mediterranean Sea flooded the region. Using robot scouts, Ballard has mapped an underwater landscape complete with remnants of pre-Greek houses, pottery, and shipwrecks.
Robert Ballard deserves an A for taking the Bible seriously as a source of history. At the same time, I'm not sure that we can really equate the flood that he's discovered in the Black Sea, which may have been a huge flood, with the global flood that's described in the Bible. Remember that the Israelites came up with a unique word to describe the flood in Genesis. They called it the Mabul. It's a global catastrophe that wipes out all of life. So while the Black Sea flood may have been a gigantic flood, it's still a local event. It's not the global event that's described in Scripture.
Adventists are rallying in support of a devastated community in the U.S. state of Connecticut this week. Adventist Church President Ted Wilson said members worldwide are praying for students, parents, and teachers dealing with the loss of classmates and colleagues after a gunman killed 20 children and 6 adults at Sandy Hook Elementary School last week. Wilson said the tragic killing of young children fills Adventists with great sympathy and enormous sadness.
In the wake of the shooting, schools across North America, including those run by the Adventist Church, are taking extra precautions. Adventist educators in North America recently met with the military security specialists and held seminars on school safety. Adventist educators say they're committed to ensuring the safety of every student. The church in North America operates more than 900 elementary and secondary schools.
With the launch this month of the Hope for You magazine, Adventist young people in Africa have a new witnessing tool. They're sharing the magazine with fellow students and friends on campuses across the continent. In Kenya, young literature evangelists are selling the magazine at universities in and around Nairobi, helping to pay for their own education in the process. Thousands of students in Zambia have already sold the first batch of magazines printed in the country, all 18,000 copies.
We hope that the magazine will also contribute to helping them affirm their Adventist identity and perhaps even find a calling to work for the church, perhaps in the capacity as a literature evangelist or other things.
An Adventist supporting ministry is remembering the blind and low-sight community this holiday season. Christian Record Services for the Blind mailed an audio Christmas program to thousands of clients worldwide. Each digital cartridge includes 10 hours of Christmas music, readings, stories, and drama. Ministry officials say the project is a response to the limited amount of mainstream audio programming available during the Christmas season. Christian Record offers a library of Braille, large print publications, and audio recordings to the blind and low-sight community.
Coming up, we preview the upcoming issue of Adventist Review. This week, the magazine explores how God reveals himself through his people.
Praying together with people, uniting with God, seeking him as one, there's nothing like it. And I just want you to imagine with me over thousands of churches coming together, praying, thousands of people, maybe even over 1 million. What is God going to do? I don't know, but I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to be there, and I hope you'll be praying with me.
Welcome back. Here's Steve Chavez for a look at this week's Adventist Review.
This week, as people around the world are celebrating Christ's birth, our gift to you is a cover story by Andy Nash, Longing for a Messiah. In it, Nash traces the history of humankind and reminds us how a righteous God has always worked to bridge the chasm between himself and sinful humanity. It's a powerful and useful reminder of a God who desires for our salvation will not be thwarted. In his editorial, Turning Christmas from Blue to Merry, our online editor Carlos Medley suggests that in spite of our efforts to make the holidays joyful, there's a surprising number among us who will find little, if any, joy this Christmas. While many of us will be surrounded with family, friends, food, and warmth, we should also be sensitive to those who, for one reason or another, are lonely and alone this holiday season. Searching the Face of God is a study about knowing God by how he has revealed himself to his creatures over the centuries. In most cases, God's face is revealed by how he interacted with his people. It's the same today. How do you see God's face? Finally, we have a wonderful story by Carolyn Stuyvesant entitled A Christmas Banquet. It's the story of a trip she took to Ethiopia and how... Well, wait a minute. Why should I spoil the surprise? You can read it for yourself in this week's Adventist Review or online at www.adventistreview.org.
Christian Record Services for the Blind reaches 20,000 members of the blind and low-sight community. This week, Ray Dabrowski talks about the ministry's newest large print publication.
This month, after 3 decades of bringing comfort, encouragement, and words of reflection to the visually impaired, Live Glow magazine came to an end. Next January, the Christian Record Services for the Blind is replacing Live Glow with a newly redesigned, larger magazine entitled Light. Live Glow, and now Light, has a circulation of 14,000, and as of all Christian Record subscription publications, the magazine is available free of charge to legally blind individuals. Christian Record was established as a general conference institution in 1899 with the intention to supply Christian materials to blind people in Braille. The expanded services now include digital audio and large print publications. Today, Christian Record serves 20,000 blind and visually impaired individuals in 70 countries. Many of the publications serve a population niche that supports print, and large print at that. Editor Bert Williams identifies the magazine's target audience as the interdenominational Christians who are legally blind. Most recipients are not members of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. The magazine serves older readers, many with age-related diseases affecting vision. Consider sharing Light with your neighbors and relatives who are legally blind. For subscriptions and other services from Christian Record, please visit our website.
Now let's turn to Megan Bronner for an interview with Family Ministries Associate Director Elaine Oliver, a familiar face for many of our regular viewers. This week, Elaine answers holiday-related questions from our Facebook and Twitter followers.
Thanks for joining us today, Elaine.
It's good to be here, Megan.
So our first question, we got a couple holiday-related ones. The first one is, how can we teach our children to be less focused on getting things?
Yeah, it seems like Christmas has become this very commercialized holiday, and I think it's important. It's a great question because it's important for us to refocus our kids. So one of the things we can do with kids of any age, whether they're toddlers or teenagers, is to focus on giving to people who really are in need. Because so often we're giving gifts to one another and we really don't need anything. A lot of them most times are wants. And so we can help our children to think about others that are not as fortunate as they are. Even if you're not wealthy, your children can learn to go to the store, buy a nice doll for someone or a truck for another kid who's in need. And that's one of the ways that we can teach our kids to focus more on giving as opposed to getting. And it's fun. They enjoy doing it.
Absolutely. And another Christmas-related question. Couples often overextend themselves during the holidays. So do you have any tips for cutting back on the stress?
There's a lot of pressure. There are a lot of commercials at this time of the year. So a quick thing I would say is like turn off the TV. Because from, the minute you turn the TV on, you see Lexuses with big bows, you see jewelry, their, clothes and all of that. So we need to turn off the TV. But aside from that, couples need to really decide what their goals are for themselves and decide how much money they're going to spend at Christmas time. What are the things that they really need? And it's not to take the surprise and the joy out of Christmas, but we really need to focus on what is best for ourselves and not worry about what our neighbors are doing or what our friends are doing. And I would say to the women out there, because a lot of times women will say, well, my girlfriend's husband bought her this for Christmas. I'm hoping this is what I'm gonna get. And I think we need to move away from that and work as a team, as a couple, and say, let's look at our finances and do this early in the year. So you can either, if it's really important to open something at Christmas time and to surprise each other, start saving throughout the year so that you don't find yourself stressed out and not being able to pay some bills because you're trying to buy big gifts for each other.
And our last question, what do we do with that family member who just wants to boss everyone around at Christmas time? How can we handle that?
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes people might say that about me because, I love having the family around. But it's really important on both sides. So the family member who you can't control needs to learn that people have other priorities or other family members or whatever. But since you can't control that person, you can only control yourself. So if you find that there is a family member who just every year seems to dominate Christmas, you need to make a decision as an adult, whether it's you as a single person or a young couple or a young family. you have to set some boundaries. And you can say to your, grandma or auntie or even your parents, this year we're going to establish a family tradition at our home and we'd love to come visit you. Is it okay if we come visit on Christmas Eve or maybe later on Christmas Day or some other time during the week? And if they say no, then you have to become comfortable with that. But it's really important for people to set boundaries for themselves and for others during Christmas so that it doesn't become a really stressful time for them.
Oh, that's some great advice. I hope everyone has a happy holiday, and you too.
Happy holidays. Thank you.
We have more of Elaine's answers to your questions online. You can find them at news.adventist.org. Just look for the extended version of this interview.
Still ahead on ANN, exercise. Doctors are calling it the single most important factor behind healthy, long lives. We'll find out how to make time for more of it.
But up next, this week's Tech Corner.
Hi, my name is Carrie, and I just want to share what a blessing it has been for me to be a part of the united prayer that we've had in our church. We've probably had a number of Global Rain prayer times together, and I have seen the mighty power of God work in our church family with bringing healing and forgiveness, and just seeing the power of God work in our children. And I just want to encourage all of you to join this time. It is not an option to come together in united prayer. It is a necessity. So please, I encourage you to join with your church family and even in your own family to come together and pray, because God has promised, where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, I am there in the midst of you.
As I was reading through The Great Hope, this passage caught my eye. Thus the death of Christ was the climax of the proof that their belief had been correct. The reason this passage brings me hope is because I knew when I had first started out on my Christian walk, God had to save me. But it took a lot. It took His sacrifice and His death to show me that He was still alive today in my life. And because of His life, I'm here today talking to you about the great hope. And the reason it gives me so much hope, and that hope is placed solely in Jesus Christ. He is my everything, my Redeemer. He is my one great hope.
Welcome back. For many families, holiday gatherings are a great photo opportunity. On this week's Tech Corner, Daryl Gungadu shares a tip on choosing the right camera to capture these memories.
You may be thinking about buying a new camera. How do you rate a camera from one brand to another or from one spec to another? Well, most people rate them by megapixels. As you can see here, I have a Samsung camera phone that's rated at 8 megapixels, and I have a Canon DSLR camera also rated at 8 megapixels. Now look at the image difference. You see, it's not the megapixel that really makes the quality of that image, but it's more the size of the sensor inside the camera. This Samsung phone has a very tiny sensor inside, while this DSLR camera has a much larger sensor. The size of that sensor makes a big difference on the quality of that image.
Adventist Women's Ministries challenges women around the world to share their faith. This week, Raquel Heiss explains how women in Brazil are becoming agents of hope in their communities.
The Great Controversy Book Project is one of the church initiatives that women around the globe are participating in. In the Southwest Brazil Union Mission, the Women's Ministries organized a Great Controversy Rally under the theme "In the Same Hope as Our Pioneers." The goal of this event was to strengthen the hope and faith of more than 5,000 women, and also to inspire and equip them to become agents of hope. The day was intense. The women start on their knees praying for those who would become agents of hope, for those who would receive the books they would distribute, and for the work of the Holy Spirit in the hearts of those who would read the material. In the afternoon, an army of women went to the streets to bring hope to the homes in their communities. Thousands of copies of the Great Hope books, along with the smiles and prayers, were used to proclaim that our great hope is Jesus Christ.
10,000 steps a day. That's the amount of exercise many doctors recommend for maximum quality of life. And as Peter Langlis says on this week's Health Ministries feature, exercise fits into even the busiest schedules.
I just don't have the time to exercise. You don't? Well, really, you don't have time not to exercise. When one looks at the health interventions, what can I do well? Can I walk? Can I exercise? Should I eat right? Should I be sleeping adequately? You should be doing all of those things. But if you look for the single most important intervention you can do to lengthen your life and improve the quality of your life, exercise is the one to do. Now, do we have the time? Well, the recommendation is that we should be walking or exercising up to 45 minutes every day, 7 days a week. Well, sometimes we can turn around and say, well, most days of the week? Yes, most days of the week, but the best is 7 days a week. Well, 45 minutes, 7 days a week, where do we get the time? Well, you know that you can split it up. Even if you're doing 30 minutes a day, you're doing great, but you need to do it. You can split it up into 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes midday, 10 minutes in the evening, or 15 minutes twice a day, or 15 minutes 3 times a day, and you're still getting what you need to do. How do you know you're getting enough? Get yourself a pedometer. Stick it on your belt or your clothing somewhere. Make sure that you're doing 10,000 steps every day. That way, you'll be walking yourself to a longer, better quality of life.
When we come back after the break, support for Adventist singles.
In the context of the great controversy, I think that the element of hope in it that gives us reasons to expect God to be the final victor in the great controversy. I read it when I was 16 years old, and it changed my life. It gave me an identity as a Seventh-day Adventist, and from that time onwards I was a committed member of our church.
Welcome back. Adventist Single Adult Ministries provides Christian fellowship and support for church members who have never married or who are divorced or widowed. This week, Andrea Hicks talks about how singles can manage sexual desire.
Humans were created sexual beings. Sex was invented by God as the highest form of intimacy to be experienced in the safety and commitment of marriage. Society has broken down moral values. The media has stirred up the need for sexuality. We know not all single adults are struggling with the temptation of sexual immorality, but for those single adults who struggle with this temptation, we're going to talk about some tools to assist you. Let's talk about how single adults can manage their sexual desires. We can start by saying the word cancel to intercept sexual thoughts. This is basically self-control of our thoughts, fasting and prayer, avoiding compromising situations during periods of vulnerability, work out at least 3 times a week. Make a decision to do the right thing. Faith in God empowers you to comply with the direction of your will. ASAM, Adventist Single Adult Ministries, can be a support system for single adults, assisting them to be better Christians. Once those tools are met, we can meet those needs in such a way that the single adult will be strengthened and be drawn closer to Christ.
Early Adventists held the very first Sabbath school class a decade before the Seventh-day Adventist Church was officially established. This week, Gary Swanson talks about what today's Sabbath school lessons have to offer.
In the year 1852, 160 years ago, James White wrote the very first Sabbath school lessons. They appeared in the first issue of the Youth's Instructor. A year later, the first Sabbath school class was organized. It was in the home of James and Ellen White, Rochester, New York. This was all 10 years before the official organization of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Since those early times, we've provided a continuous resource for the discipleship of our children in Sabbath school. Today, GraceLink comprises the only official Sabbath school lessons for our children worldwide, and it seeks to combine the traditional strengths of old Sabbath school with the best of Christ-centered approaches in the discipling of our children. In the first quarter of 2013, GraceLink is releasing the first phase of a rigorous curriculum assessment in the lessons for the Junior Sabbath School Division. It's featuring beautiful new representational art. It also includes a new resource to help parents and teachers lead a child to Christ. It's thoroughly biblical and focused on life. It emphasizes distinctive Adventist beliefs and our unique prophetic vision. It's structured to be fully inclusive of the world church that we have become. In the GraceLink lessons, children are taught by the book. The aim is not merely to acquaint children with the Bible, but to discover God's truth. They're immersed in the Bible stories, allowed to question and discuss, encouraged to serve to be like Jesus.
Now let's turn to David Trim for a look at Adventist history. This week, highlights in the life of the man behind the church's focus on worldwide mission.
Welcome to This Week in Adventist History. On December 16 in 1943, the General Conference Missions Division, based in Washington, D.C., was established by the General Conference Committee to supervise the mission fields that, because of World War II, could no longer communicate with their division headquarters. On December 19 in 1865, William A. Spicer was born in Freeborn, Michigan. After service as a missionary in Britain and India, in 1903 he was elected General Conference Secretary, a post he held for a remarkable 19 years, before serving as GC President for a further 8 years. Spicer created the administrative infrastructure for sending and supporting missionaries, and by his ceaseless promotion of foreign missions, he implanted a passion for worldwide mission in the Adventist DNA. 51 years later, on December 19 in 1916, the New Mexico and West Texas conferences combined to form the Texaco Conference, which at that time had 504 members. Today, its membership is nearly 12,000. Another 49 years later, on December 19, 1965, Brian Dunn died in the Solomon Islands, aged 25, after an islander stabbed him with a spear. A missionary nurse, Dunn was the first Seventh-day Adventist missionary to be killed in the South Pacific. And on December 21 in 1947, the Paraguay mission was organized, 55 years after the first Adventist missionary visited the country. That was This Week in Adventist History.
Thanks for watching ANN. Join us next week for more news from the headquarters of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
In the meantime, check out our Facebook page. You can connect with other Adventists worldwide and find links to all of our stories, photos, and videos. Just visit facebook.com/Adventist News.
Our good news for this week comes from the New Testament book of Matthew. The passage says, "Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls."
That's our program for this week. And remember, you can always visit news.adventist.org for daily news and videos. Until next time, God bless.